It's a pleasure to welcome the Chief Director of Financial Investments and Savings from the National Treasury, Olano Makhubela. Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting the National Treasury again to the 10X conference. And thank you to 10X and particularly to Stephen for the confidence he has shown in the National Treasury. This is the second time, actually the third time I think we are being invited. So we've decided to do things slightly differently today. So I've got one of my colleagues. So we are a team of 4 people at the Treasury. It's me, it's Ms. Thandazile Alvina Taylor, it's Dr. David McCarthy, who you would have encountered before, and also Basil Maseko. So I'm going to do the easier part and just give you a sense where we are in terms of the reforms. And I will hand over to Ms. Thandazile Taylor, who will take care of you on the other issues, including also your questions. Okay, so I think just to take you through the usual message, and it's interesting because yesterday I actually got a call from Business Day, and he was trying to get a sense around the recent draft regulations we had issued. So he asked me, what exactly are you trying to achieve with these retirement reforms? Which is quite interesting because then it sort of indicates that we need to repeat the message as often as we can so that people are aware exactly what we are trying to do with these reforms. So essentially it's to encourage household savings and to ensure that individuals are not vulnerable to poverty while working and in retirement. So the key policy proposals, and some of these have been effected through legislation. Some of the legislation has been postponed, and we'll talk about that quickly. So to take you through the key proposals to encourage preservation and portability, and you would have seen from last week's default regulations how we are trying to encourage employees to at least preserve their savings when they change jobs. Of course, giving them the right to opt out. So this is not hard preservation, which obviously will require some discussion with various stakeholders, including the unions too. Enhancing governance of funds, we have effected much of this through the Financial Services Laws General Amendment Act, and I'll touch upon that later. Encourage annuitizing at retirement. And the reason is simple there. It doesn't help much to try and help people to save and accumulate during their working lives, and only for them to have a lump sum at the end and needless to say, spend it quickly and find themselves in poverty later in their retirement. So the idea there is to see how best we can encourage people to actually annuitize rather than taking their retirement benefits as a cash lump sum. Simplifying the taxation of retirement contributions. So the presentation from Morningstar was quite interesting in terms of how much we still need to do. And it's actually quite heartening to see that probably we are on the right path in terms of some of, if not most of these proposals. And I'll touch upon that in the next slide. Encouraging non-retirement savings through tax-free saving plans. So you would all realize as of 1 March, the industry launched. We launched the regulations, the industry launched the products. And we think that's a good initiative to try and get South Africans to save beyond just their retirement. And in a way, that starts dealing with the concern around people having to always rely on their retirement savings whenever a rainy day faces them. Encourage good value retirement products and services by reviewing costs. I think this is one of the big issues globally and locally. Of course, again, the Morningstar presentation was quite interesting in arguably giving a balanced picture that we might not necessarily be the most expensive out there, but also we are not necessarily the cheapest out there. So I think there's still room for some improvements. And I think you would have seen also from the draft regulations how we are trying to see how best we can further bring down costs and charges in the system. Okay, so on progress. So the process started in 2011, and extensive consultations have taken place since the release of various technical discussion papers. We did provide some background in terms of an update and where we see ourselves going in terms of some of the pending reforms, and that was captured in the 2015 budget review. So coming to the big elephant, I suppose, here, the Taxation Laws Amendment Act. So I'm not going to go through the points in sequence. I'm going to jump between the points. As you would have realized, we had to postpone the Taxation Laws Amendment Act, which essentially harmonized the taxation of retirement contributions between pension funds, RAs, and provident funds, and went further to require provident funds to annuitize. That law was supposed to take effect 1 March 2015. There were some concerns, and I think you would have seen some of the resignations out there, which were unfortunately attributed to the legislation. So we had to back off and suspend the legislation until further consultations. We are still hoping that we will have the effective date coming into place next year, so 1 March 2016. We are engaging with the unions and NEDLEC partners to see how best we can accommodate each other and what the concerns are. So that's the message for now, that we are hopeful that come 1 March 2016, the legislation which was postponed will become effective. The Financial Services Laws General Amendment Act, so that deals largely with the governance issues, so around trustee training, whistleblowing protection measures, fiduciary duty. So we made it clear that the trustees have a duty towards both the fund and also the members. The tax-free savings accounts, as I mentioned, they are already available. And I must say, we are very grateful to the industry for how they've taken up the initiative and literally championed and marketed the tax-free savings accounts. Background on draft regulations. Okay. So just to give you a sense in terms of what we are trying to do, and Ms. Taylor will take you through the details there. We had indicated some time ago that we would be considering some draft default regulations to see if we could change some of the culture in the industry, and largely to enable retirees to retire comfortably. And I think that's the key message. Whatever we are doing is essentially to optimize retirees' retirement benefits. It's got nothing to do with nationalization. It's got nothing to do with Treasury having run out of money and therefore trying to grab funds out there. It's all about the workers and ensuring that there are sufficient governance measures and the structure and the system works well to benefit employees. So last week we published the draft default regulations. I think it was on Thursday. On the same date, we also published the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, which effectively brings back the postponed legislation around the tax harmonizing and annuitizing. So all those documents are now available on our website. So to come back quickly on the draft regulations, it's really trying to take advantage of behavioral finance and economics, which shows that if you design good default products and systems, and default individuals in them, you are likely to have a positive outcome because one, individuals tend to stick with the default rather than exercising their right to exit from the default, even though that right will always be available to them. And we think this will take us a long way in starting to put in place a system which is simple, products which are simple, very cost effective, transparent, and enable retirees to understand and be in touch with their retirements during the accumulation phase right up to retirement. But I will stop here because I think it would be nice to leave some ample time for Q&A. So Ms. Thandazile Tela will take the stage.
Thanks, Olano. We teach kids that sharing is caring, so we will share the pain and the stage and the limelight. And it's comforting from Anthony's presentation that we need to guide members. There's still a lot that needs to be done. And also looking at 10X's leaflet, the program, it will touch on governance that will still need to be addressed, which is something that we're trying to push forward when it comes to these default regulations. And also the poor industry practices that do not serve the needs of the customers. I think we are all consumers or customers or members of pension funds or retirement funds. And at some point, we need to be guided, we need to be advised, we need to be educated and empowered. We don't have the same level of understanding. So Olano has mentioned that default regulations that we've issued last week seek to encourage the industry to serve the needs of the customers. So you need to act in the best way that also serves the needs of the customer. It should not only be about the bottom line or the profit motive. And a lot of members that are defaulted into certain products tend to stay in those products. So we need to ensure that those default products serve the needs of the customer. The first regulation 37 is the default investment portfolio. The principles that are covered by this regulation is that the product needs to be appropriate for members. It can be customized. These are principles, so you don't really have to adapt them or comply with them. As long as you structure this product to serve, it's not a rule, it's a principle. You need to regularly communicate the investment product to the customer. Encourage passive or enhanced investments. Performance fees, which Anthony has indicated that South Africa still needs to reconsider, are not permitted for default investment products. Also, loyalty bonuses. The investment default requires the fund to comply with Regulation 28. Members who are knowledgeable enough to invest their savings in a way that they want, can opt out of the default investment into whatever investment portfolios that they require. The strategy also needs to be reviewed regularly. The default when it comes to people changing their jobs is that you are faced with a cash lump sum. You don't always get advice in terms of the options that you are faced with. For example, if I resign, I'll have this form from HR which will tell me whether I need to take a cash lump sum or transfer. And the HR manager is not that knowledgeable to tell me about preservation products and what would happen should I take my cash lump sum, the tax that I'm faced with. I get the statement from my pension fund. It shows the lump sum that I'm entitled to. And there's a small footnote there which says, this is before taxation. And someone might overlook that and say, ooh, if I resign now, I get 1.2 million. And I might not be aware that I might face a tax liability of 200,000 or more if I take the cash lump sum. So we need to, as the industry, there should be that drive to advise members or customers that should you withdraw, there's a tax. And you also lose the benefit of compound interest. And again, the structure of the industry, the costs that we see or perceive as high are largely because the money does not stay in the system that long. So people tend to get out of the system, get into the system too quickly. So the regulation 38 says, advise the member. If a member wants to withdraw, that is still fine, but make sure you give them a retirement benefits counselor to advise them on the options that they have and the risks or the advantages of the various options that are available to them. And if a member leaves, the fund should provide an option of making that member a deferred pensioner or a paid-up member. And that member should also be advised that your money will be left here, but if you want it, you can come and get it. So you won't be locked in. Your money will not be left into this fund until you retire. You do have the option to withdraw it. You do have the option to leave it there. You do have the option to take it to a preservation fund, retirement annuity fund, or move it with you to a prospective employer's fund that is port following the member. If a member decides to leave the benefit in the fund, there should not be an initial charge when a member becomes a paid-up member or a deferred member. And there should not be a difference in terms of charges for active members and a paid-up member. Yes, the paid-up member will not be contributing any further. That's what the regulation says. So there won't be that contribution charge. Paid-up members will no longer be eligible for risk benefits. And as I've mentioned, paid-up members, if they want to withdraw or transfer their money somewhere else, they should be given access to a retirement benefits counselor who will advise that person of the risks, advantages, and options that are available. For example, should I come to the fund and say I want to transfer my fund to a preservation fund, a person needs to be advised that when you move your money from this fund to a preservation fund, you'll only have one withdrawal in the lifetime of that benefit. If you move it to a retirement annuity fund, you will not be able to withdraw at all. People need to be aware of those options. So we've dealt with your money is in this investment fund, you're contributing. You don't have the knowledge of how you should invest. You need to have a default investment portfolio. You're changing jobs. You need to have options of how your money should be preserved. And then when it comes to retirement, I guess most of us, our level of understanding sort of deteriorates as we grow older. So we need to guide the pensioners or people who are going into retirement in terms of the options that they have. Because all we know is that you have a life annuity and a living annuity. And these products, in between these two classes, there are different other sub-products. For example, a life annuity would be structured differently in terms of the guarantees. People might not be aware of them. The living annuities also have different structures, I believe. So I've been protected all along by the trustees. I started contributing. I didn't have to worry about a lot of things. And then when it comes to retirement, I should have that comfort that I'll have the same level of guidance and protection that I had while I was contributing. Again, the product, the default annuity product, needs to be appropriate for members. It can be structured in terms of income, health, and the account balance. It needs to be regularly communicated to the member. And again, prior to a member reaching retirement, they need to be given advice in terms of the products that are out there. And once a member has purchased this product or this policy, it needs to be reviewed regularly to ensure that it still serves the needs of the member. The investment should also be compliant with Regulation 28 and be consistent with the default investment portfolio regulation. Products that can be offered as a default annuity policy or default annuity product include in-fund guaranteed pensions, in-fund living annuities, in-fund with-profit pensions, and certain out-of-life annuities guaranteed by the Life Office. Thank you.